Hey everybody! Today we're going to be talking about the spread plate technique that we're going to be using in class. And when it comes to the spread plate technique, this is one way or one technique that we use for what we call plate counting, and we'll talk more about plate counting later on in the semester. But kind of the way that the spread plate works out is that it is a quantitative test for the presence of microbes, generally in things like food or beverage items. And because of that, we generally have to dilute our samples multiple times through a process called serial dilutions. And we'll talk more about serial dilutions later on in the semester as well. But overall, again, this is a test that is sometimes used to basically see if there are a low enough number of microbes, again, in a beverage or in a food item to whether this might be safe for consumption, and because of that, whether or not you might be able to sell a specific item. So when it comes to, again, these plate counts, the spread plate is one way that we can go about doing some of these plate counts. Another similar technique is what we call a pour plate. And really the difference between a spread plate and a pour plate is that the spread plate only allows growth on the top of the medium, whereas a pour plate allows growth on the inside and on top of the medium as well. But I just want you to be aware again that with the spread plate technique, we're only going to be looking for growth on the top of the medium that we use. So with our introduction out of the way, let's kind of go through the materials that you would need in order to do a spread plate technique. So you will need your Bunsen burner and your striker to light it. You are going to need your sample. So it has to be a liquid sample. So again, we're going to be using a broth for our class. But if this again was a food item, you would have to blend it down to make it into a liquid. If it's a beverage, you would just take it straight from the beverage and kind of test it from there. But again, we're going to use a broth for our class. You are going to need a pipetter, and I'm going to be using a glass pipette, but you can use a glass or disposable pipette in order to do the broth transfer that we're going to be doing. You're going to be needing the plate that you're going to be doing your test on, and then you're going to be needing a bit of alcohol. So I have some ethyl alcohol in a beaker and our metal triangle. All right, but with all the different materials out of the way, let's actually go through the procedure and kind of talk about how we would go about doing the spread plate. So I'm going to go ahead and get my Bunsen burner going real fast. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to take, and using again my pipette transfer technique, I'm just going to transfer some of my broth onto the plate. So let's go ahead. I'm going to get my pipetter. Going to get my autoclave, again, glass pipette, gently insert it into the pipetter. Take my sample, uncap your sample, and pass it through the mouth of the tube using the little dial up here. I'm going to pull up 0.2 mils, so I'm just going to go right up there. I've pulled out my 0.2 mils, flame the mouth of the tube, and recap it. I'm just going to open the lid, put my sample directly in the middle, again by squeezing the button on the side here. Push the top to get the rest of the sample out. I'm going to go ahead and lay this down. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is then actually perform the spread component of my spread plate technique. And there is kind of one safety consideration that we have to worry about when we do this, and that is again that we're using alcohol. So when it comes to the alcohol safety part, the biggest thing here is basically just that I'm going to be dipping my triangle in it, and then I'm going to pass it through the flame, and the triangle is going to catch on fire. So if for some reason, again, let's say I freak out, I dip it into the beaker for some reason, now the beaker's on fire, I'm freaking out more, I knock over the beaker, now my table's on fire, it's an alcohol fire. Just step away. Don't do any types of heroics again. Just kind of make sure that you are safe and you get away from that alcohol fire, and it will burn out very quickly on its own. So that's just kind of the little safety consideration there. The other safety consideration that we're going to be worried about is going to be the metal loop, our metal triangle. Do not hold the triangle in the flame. You're only supposed to pass it through it. Again, this is not like our loops. This one conducts heat. So if you hold it in the flame and this gets red hot, you're burning your fingers. But kind of with some of those safety considerations out of the way, let's actually do the last step. So again, I'm just going to take my triangle, I'm going to just kind of gently swirl it in the alcohol, pass it through the flame, catch it on fire. I'm going to hold it near my flame again to give it a couple seconds to kind of cool down so I'm not killing all my bacteria. And then now, I'm literally just going to take my plate and I'm just going to gently swirl the sample on the plate. So I'm spreading it all over. Alright. And then lastly again, I'm going to dip it in the alcohol again. Pass it to the flame to clean it. Oops, there we go. And now I'm done. So let me turn it off now. So again, make sure that with the alcohol you are very cautious and you're not getting the alcohol all over, again, the table on fire, that kind of stuff. And if it catches on fire, just step away. But other than that, that should be everything that I need to discuss in regards to our spread plate technique.